I have joined. Well, first of all, I would like to tell you this, Jovan, you remember we agreed for Friday 4 o'clock. So, well, others, oh, well, I think it concerns only those who are studying biotechnology. So you have to pass your exams earlier than others. So, well, I will tell you uh, well, I will send later the exact, well, now also I can give you the, the list of those people. So they are Abach Moses Ovoicho, Abach Moses Ovoicho, yes? Do you know him? Nobody knows him. He's from Nigeria. You know him, Jovan? I will just write his name in Russian. Unfortunately, only in Russian I can do that because I don't know. Well, so these are people who are well in that list. Well, Maria Zaychinoka, I know that she has already given me her written work. So Esther Idota, well, so you can recognize your names or not? Well, in case you do, or there are some friends of yours, please tell them that I've written them by personal email, but still I haven't received any answer because, well, till next.
Yes. Most of us did not get your mail, sir. We did not receive any of your mail.
Well, I took the email from the list which was given to me by Masha. So, well, please, I will write down my email. So ask those people to connect with me. So they have two choices: either to join the conference with Jovan Velanac on Friday at 4 o'clock Moscow time, or to send me the written work in English, some essay concerning history of science, so that I could estimate it. So this concerns only people who are studying biotechnology. The rest of you will pass exams further, maybe in January, because you started earlier, or you started later your course. So this is organizational questions, which are very important, because in case you will miss your zachot or your intermediate exam, or I don't know how it is called, then you will not receive your stipendia, or how to say stipendia, Jovan, how do you call it?
Scholarship.
Scholarship, yes. So how about, yes. So how about medical biotechnology? Well, I have also these people. Masha told me these people. Medical biotechnology, maybe they will start later. I will ask also Masha. So I will be I'm also always in contact with her. So every day we exchange messages. So in case medical biotechnology is also on the list, I will immediately tell you, because I think I have most of your emails. Yes, Esther, yes, this is Esther. This concerns you. So you have to pass your exam. Esther, can you answer me? Esther, please Esther.
Yes, Professor.
Yes, Esther. So you are among those people who have to receive their zachot or intermediate exam till Monday next week. So there's an opportunity to join the conference with Jovan Velanats, who is also present here at 4 o'clock on Friday. But if it is not convenient for you, you can organize your own conference, and I will listen to you and maybe some other students of your group. And also there's an opportunity, as did Maria Zaychinoka, to write a short essay on history of philosophy, maybe those philosophers that we have already studied, or maybe you have your own favorite philosopher. So this written essay also can be esteemed, and you will pass your zachot, okay? So just think about that. So there are different opportunities, okay?
Okay.
Yes, please decide and then write me on my email, Iván Lupandin this is we call it dog Yandex.ru, but I don't know how you call this sign after Iván Lupandin. It's a seems like and, yes. Jovan, how do you call this sign in
dot?
Okay, dot also you can do.
Even lupandin@gmail.com.
Okay. Well, so just mainly that's all. So we can start perhaps our last lecture in this semester, because I think that next Tuesday it will be too late for you, or you still have classes next Tuesday. If next Tuesday you have still classes on your timetable, then we can arrange a lecture next Tuesday. So it depends on your abilities. So if you are busy with your exams, then yes, the written form on any philosopher of choice, yes, but it should be philosopher, but the philosopher you like most, okay? So you can already start, even if you are not from this group, so you can also prepare essays if you, because I know that you have a lot of classes and you are mostly busy with different exams, different occupations. Philosophy is not the major thing because you will not be professional philosophers. This only some subject which is not so very important for you, because you are combinatorics, bioinformatics, biotechnology. Well, it of course it somehow is related to philosophy, but not directly. Okay. So, we'll ask Ojasvini whether it will be possible for us to meet next Tuesday, or this will be our last lecture. Ojasvini, what do you think about that?
Sir, I think we are able to meet. We will be able to meet next Tuesday. There is no problem, because till now we don't know that if next week it's the end or not. Like it should not be the last class.
Okay, so Ojasvini, I will wait. I will come next Tuesday to deliver a lecture for those who are still able to listen to it. If, say, people from this, I don't know, it's
medical biotechnology, sir.
Yes. So if they already started their examination session, so they of course will not attend next Tuesday, because they will already receive a zachot or exam on philosophy from me. I will just start to maybe on Friday, and till Monday I have to fill all the sheets, okay, examination sheets. So well, that's the now we can start with our regular lecture. And we have today a new philosopher, called Benedict Spinoza. Well, he's Jewish. I see some Jewish names among you: Isaac, Moses, Israel, even Esther. So you are perhaps, because you bear these names, you perhaps understand the source of these names. So, for example, Esther. Esther comes from the Bible. She was the Jewish woman, the wife of the king of Persia, and she played a crucial role in saving the Jews from so-called pogrom, or just extermination. And well, Isaac was the son of Abraham, so beloved son, whom Abraham was asked to deliver sacrifice, but then changed his plans, so he was only tempting Abraham. But still, interesting story. We'll deal with it perhaps if we'll continuation of our course in the next semester. I'm not sure about that, but there's such philosophers, Søren Kierkegaard, who delivered much attention to this story of Abraham and Isaac. Well, about Moses, everyone knows. Everyone has, I think, heard this jazz composition, "Let My People Go," from Neil Armstrong. So, well, and now we are with this Jewish problem directly, because our main hero today is Benedict or Baruch Spinoza. Baruch or Baruch, this is in Jewish Hebrew, blessed, or so this is Latin Benedict, it's the same. So benedicere, it means in Latin to bless somebody. So Benedict is a blessed child, okay? Baruch. Well, so he was born in Amsterdam in a Jewish family in 1632. I'm sorry, I will write Spinoza. So Spinoza. So his date of birth is 1632. So his parents emigrated from Portugal. So Spinoza in Portuguese, or in also in Spanish, it's pronounced Espinoza also, and it's comes from the word thorn, thorns in plural, thorn. Thorn. You know this thorn. It's there's no roses without thorns. Okay. You guess it. Yes, this word. Jovan, you know this word thorn.
No.
No, it's rose. Do you know this flower, rose?
Yeah.
Now there's a proverb. There's no rose without thorns. Thorn.
Oh, thorns. Okay, thorn.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe I mispronounced it. Yes, I wrote it in chat. Maybe I hope I wrote it correctly. Thorn. So I will just check it. I think I did it correctly. So
Yeah, you did.
yes, thorn. Well, yes. Well, this Cambridge Dictionary also has it. A small sharp point on the stem of a plant. Okay, this is a definition of thorn. 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 Yes, you see, you hear. Thorn. A small sharp point on the stem of a plant. Okay. So, sorry. So, this is the formal definition. So, in Latin, it's spina. Spina. This is Latin equivalent of thorn. Spina. So Spinoza, it means thorny. thorny. Okay. Well, all these things show the Spanish and Portuguese extraction, or how to say, of Spinoza's family. They were Catholics, but in clandestinely they were true to their Jewish faith. And when the Inquisition was already threatening them, so they decided to emigrate. Otherwise, they would be persecuted as unloyal Christians. Okay, so they emigrated. I mean, the parents of Spinoza and the grandparents, they emigrated first to France and then to Holland. In Holland at that time, there was a freedom of religion. So people could confess Judaism openly. And the Jews in Amsterdam, for example, had 2 synagogues. One synagogue was for those who came from Spain and Portugal, and they spoke Ladino. Ladino is a is a language. Well, it's a dialect of Spanish language. It is still spoken in Israel, but well, you can consult the Wikipedia article on Ladino. Well, and the other synagogue was for Jews from Polish and German roots, and they spoke Hiddish, I think. Well, so it's a dialect of German language. So there were, and those Jews from Spain, they were called Sephardim or Sephards, because Sfarad is in Jewish Spain. And those who came from Germany and Poland, they were called Ashkenazim or Ashkenazi Jews. That's because Ashkenazi is in Jewish Germany. So these 2 communities were in peace, more or less in peaceful relations with each other. But Spinoza, our main hero today, belonged to the Ladino community, so Jews from Spain and Portugal. When he was 13, he received his so-called bar-mitsva. Well, it's always a difficulty for me to write it correctly. Mitzvah, maybe like that, or maybe I'm mistaken a little bit. Well, they also call it Aliyat Torah, which means extends or extending to the Torah, the sacred book, 5 books of Moses. Okay, so well, it is an exam, kind of an exam, which is passed when the Jewish boy is about 13 years old. So because Spinoza was a very talented boy, so he passed this exam with excellence. I hope you will pass your exam in philosophy also with excellence, like Spinoza. So because you are also bright and well, imitate Spinoza in his in his successes and abilities, intellectual. But unfortunately, he was thinking too much on Jewish religion, on religion in general, on philosophy, on life. And he came to the conclusion that the Jewish faith is not sort of up to date, and that perhaps there are some, their enmity, for example, towards Christians and towards Christian culture is overestimated, overrated, and too strong and undeserved. And he decided to study Latin, to study European culture, and especially the philosopher René Descartes. Well, I'm sorry, Descartes. We have a lecture on Descartes, so you basically know that Descartes was a Roman Catholic and a Christian philosopher, and of course he had no Jewish traits in his philosophy. So for a Orthodox Jew to study Descartes was something very, very suspicious, okay? So, well, and Spinoza not only studied the philosophy of Descartes, but was a fan of Descartes. And so his ties with Jewish community was strained, and at last, after several not threats, but just well, I will say, Jovan, do you know enough Russian to translate предупреждение?
I think it's something like, no. I
see.
won't guess. I won't guess, but
okay, then I will try to find it.
Advice.
No, just I will find it. It's well, it's some simple word in English, but sometimes I forget these words. So, well, yes, it's a warning. Yes, okay. So he received a warning from his community that if he will continue to think freely, so he will be excluded from the synagogue. Well, I think it was in 1654 that he was banished from the synagogue or excommunicated from the synagogue. So, well, it didn't intimidate Spinoza. Well, he was, of course, financially impoverished because he couldn't inherit the money of his father, but he tried to somehow live modestly he was not married, so he earned his living by polishing lenses. So he did polished lenses, received some income, and well, his Christian friends helped him to survive. His life was threatened by the Orthodox Jews. Some fanatics among the Jews even once tried to kill him, but he managed to escape. And well, of course, the connections were very much strained between the Jews and Spinoza. Well, one choice for Spinoza was to embrace Christianity, say Calvinism or Catholicism, but he was not. He didn't think that he had enough faith in Christian religion. So he was a kind of a free thinker. Well, at that time in the 17th century, it was an exception. Now we have a lot of free thinkers. Maybe some of you also are free thinkers or agnostics or atheists even. I have a lot of such examples among my Russian students, for example, everywhere in MIPT and in Skoltech and everywhere. So it's quite common. But in the 17th century, it was, of course, a great exception that a person should have no religion. So not Jewish because he was expelled from the synagogue, and not Christian because he was not baptized. So he was like a free man here in this regard. Soon Spinoza understood the benefits of such a position, so that he could freely sort of philosophize on religion without any commitment. And it seemed to him, you remember, we spoke about Francis Bacon and his idols of the tribe, idols of the cave. So Spinoza was somehow, by these circumstances, was somehow miraculously delivered out of this cave and even out of his tribe, because his tribe was Jewish tribe. And because he was expelled from the synagogue, he was free of these idols of the tribe. Now we understand it was a Jewish tribe. Of course, it's not exactly, because say that 12 tribes of Israel, 12 tribes of Israel. So they are called the 12 sons, are forming 12 tribes of Israel. But we can also say that being a Jew is also kind of a being subject or threatened by idol of the tribe. It means Jewish tribe or Jewish nation. So the Jews somehow think in a Jewish way. Well, and Spinoza was free from that sort of Jewishness in his mentality. Well, how much we can guess, of course, something perhaps remained, because, you know, according to Freud, there is a conscious part of our thinking at subconscious. Maybe in subconsciousness he remained a Jew. With philosophers, historians of philosophy speculate much on that. In what respect Spinoza's philosophy continued to be Jewish. But formally he was free of the synagogue. He was expelled, banished. They call it herem, or, well, I think it's the same in Arabic language, this haram. So this like when you sort of, it's kind of a damnation, okay? Yes, I'm quite prohibited, yes. So it's like a curse, you understand? He was like accursed, sort of put under curse. This, well, this is the literally what means herem in Jewish, a curse. So they pronounced a curse on him. So maledictus in Latin. Okay. So well, it didn't stop him, I told you, and he continued in this way, and he was freed from these idols. And well, perhaps he considered Christianity another type of an idol. So if you are, say, Roman Catholic, you somehow take this Roman Catholic position with you when you study philosophy, and when you are doing philosophy, you do it as a Roman Catholic, for example, or as a Calvinist, for example, also a possibility. So with Spinoza, he was doing, he thought he was doing philosophy freely, without any biases, okay, without any these idols. And that perhaps prompted him to become a philosopher by vocation. But of course, he couldn't earn money by doing philosophy, like, well, I'm earning some money by giving lectures in philosophy. But for Spinoza, it was completely excluded, because he couldn't receive a place of a professor of philosophy in European university, any European university, because the indispensable like condition for that was to be baptized. Okay, so because he was didn't want to be converted to Christianity, and he didn't want to be baptized, so he, of course, nobody will take as a professor a person who is not baptized. He was suggested that perhaps they would give him a post of a teacher of philosophy in Heidelberg University, but certainly it was presumed that he will receive baptism. Otherwise, I think he would not be allowed to teach. Well, he preferred to remain like a free man, okay? So his philosophy became his hobby. It was not the way in which he earned money. So that's why he continued with this polishing of lenses, and perhaps he received some donations from his friends. Well, one of his how to say, rich friend wanted to give him a large sum of money, $10,000, which, well, at that time, thaler, it's like dollar, but and the words are of the same root. Maybe at that time it was quite a great sum, $10,000. Now it still is not so not so little, yes, especially Nigeria, where I think dollar is counts more than perhaps in Moscow. Okay, but still he declined this offer. He said, "Well, I'm not a married person. I don't have to say." Provide for my family, I have no children, no wife, so for me it's enough. So the little which I have is enough. So he was poor, but I think proud. Well, of course he couldn't we couldn't say how proud he was. Maybe it was not pride, but self-confidence or his belief in his vocation. In this way, we can call all philosophers proud. Socrates, for example, or, well, it's not arrogance, you understand. It can coexist with some kind of a humility, because Socrates, you remember, he said, "I know that I know nothing." Well, with Spinoza, there were not such extremes, but he considered himself in a privileged position to speak earnestly and truthfully, verily about, well, earnestly, I don't think it's earnestly, it's honestly better, say. He was considered himself to be an honest philosopher, see, not a biased, not a sort of paid philosopher, but honest philosopher who could speak the truth, how he understood it. So he developed his own system of ideas, which is very interesting. Partly it was based on philosophy of René Descartes. You remember that Descartes started from the proof of the existence of God. Well, Spinoza didn't deny the validity of this proof, but he just thought, what is God? Who is God? So God, he wrote in Latin. Almost all of his works were written in Latin. So he defined God as causa sui. What is that? Cause of itself. So God is a being, necessary being, which is not caused by anything. So this is, in this, I think Spinoza is in agreement with not only Descartes, but even with Thomas Aquinas, that God is a necessary being. But then comes the point of where Spinoza separates himself from Descartes, from Catholic teaching in general, and of course from Thomas Aquinas, because he doesn't make a distinction between God and creation. For, say, for all European philosophy, even not only for Catholics, but also for Protestants, and in somehow also for Jews, there is a there are two entities. So the being is divided into two kinds: the necessary being and the contingent being. Well, what is that contingent? Contingent is what depends on the will of God. So, for example, my being as a human is contingent because my parents met accidentally, because both of them were from different cities of the Soviet Union. My mother was from Odessa, my father was from Krasnodar, and they met in Moscow when they were postgraduates in psychiatry, specializing in psychiatry. So they met in the Institute of Psychiatry in Moscow. So this meeting was chance. They met in 1956, the year of the Hungarian uprising. And out of this meeting, they began to live together and got married. And in September 1957, I was born. So my birth and my existence is contingent. It's not necessary. There's nothing necessary in my existence. but God's existence is necessary. God cannot but exist. This is the common theological position of Jews, Catholics, Protestants, and everybody, Christians in general. But Spinoza took another position because he was free. He was not biased. He said, I think that God, that there are no contingent beings at all, that in rerum natura, or in the nature of things, there's nothing contingent, okay? Everything is necessary. So my birth, according to Spinoza, was also necessary. So everything that exists necessarily exists. And so there's no division between God and his creation. So the world and God are just one, okay? Well, it's perhaps for Indians, there's nothing new here, yes? Well, I've listened to a presentation in Skoltech on Advaita. Maybe Ojasvini knows it. Advaita. Advaita. It's a teaching that
Yes, sir.
all is one. Brahman and my ego are one. So my spirit, Jiva. Jiva and Brahman are one somehow. You understand? Maybe
Yes,
I'm
yes, sir.
doing it. Okay, so this is, well, helps maybe those of you who are Indians and to understand Spinoza's idea. So for Spinoza, of course, he didn't know perhaps about Advaita and Indian philosophy, but he had somehow invented something like that, that his ego sort of is lost, how to say, dissolved in this world. It's because he regarded himself part of God. So, and his thinking is part of God's thinking. So there's not Spinoza thinking, it's God that is thinking in Spinoza. We'll find later, if we'll continue our philosophy, or if not, then you will find it yourself, maybe with other teacher, that the same idea was shared by Hegel, the German philosopher who was a great admirer of the philosophy of Spinoza, Hegel. So that while thinking, you are participating in some world process. So world thinking, yes. So this the pupil of Hegel, German philosopher Ludwig Feuerbach, even wrote in his thesis that when I start thinking, I cease to be an individual. Okay. So when I'm doing this lecture, according to Feuerbach and according maybe to Spinoza and Hegel also, I cease to be an individual. This is not Ivan who is giving lecture, but somehow I participate in this world spirit or world mind, okay? So, well, on this juicy part of my lecture, I will interrupt this conference and will again enter by the same link, yes? Okay? Just okay. Да, сейчас.
Okay, okay.
Well, let's continue our lecture. So we finished with that in the nature of things, there's nothing contingent, that all is necessary, and all happenings are necessary. So, and all thinking is also somehow necessary, and all thinking beings are participating in one intellect, and that's God's intellect. So, and we compared this idea with the Indian philosophical system Advaita. Okay, just for, well, of course, this was according to Christian and Jewish religion, it was heresy, because what is most important in every religion is that God is somehow distinguished from the creation, that God is outside somehow of the creation, that God doesn't need even the creation. He is happy with himself. And if he creates something, he does it out of sheer love and benevolence, okay? So with Spinoza, it was not so. God and world are one. So world is part of God, or say world and God, you cannot distinguish. We can say God, world is a mode of existence of God, okay? So God has infinite modes and attributes, of which we know only a few. One is attribute of thinking that we have also share with God, this our thinking, and another is extension, which is also, well, we will find a kind of the same idea with Newton, who said that space extension is a sensorium Dei, or senses of God, okay? This is also important. Now, well, I see that there are some newcomers, so can I make an announcement that well, for example, David, well, there's some Davids. So one David is maybe if there are some people from bioinformatics, then we have exam earlier. So you just be on your guard. I've sent you some letters. So David, what is that David? Maybe it's, I have one David. Well, I will copy again this list. So these people are have to pass their exams earlier. So if you recognize yourself in this list, or some of your friends, please take care. Also, of course, my group of Harbor Space also have to pass an exam, but I'm not sure that anybody is present except Jovan from this Harbor Space group. Well, we'll continue with Spinoza. So now, what is the problem? So God is, according to Jewish or Christian or Muslim ideas, God is the creator, and there's a gap, or even like not only a gap, but maybe a huge difference between God and creation. First of all, God is infinite and creation is finite. Now, also, God creates the world of nothing. If God didn't want it, it wouldn't just exist at all. And there also are relations with God. So God's revelation, God's commandments, and if say a person does not follow God's commandments, it's kind of sin. It's and a man is guilty. Lost out of your life. So there's no sin and there's no guilt, because there's no freedom. There's no contingency. So you cannot behave in another way than in which you behave yourself. So all your acts are necessary. So there's no free act which you could or could not sort of or perform. So you have no liberty to perform different kinds of act. Well, say you don't have a choice, okay? That you can, for example, if you take Eve in the paradise, in the Garden of Eden, so Eve could have followed the advice of the serpent and eat the apple or the fruit, which she really did, but she could, of course, could refuse to follow the serpent and say, pronounce as in Jesus' prayer, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And so the serpent would disappear after this exorcism, so kind of. But she didn't perform the exorcism. She blindly, or maybe eagerly even, followed the serpent, and she ate the forbidden fruit, and that she committed a sin. And this sin led to a sense of guilt. So she felt guilty. She had remorses of conscience. And that's why she and Adam also, they understood that they are naked and made some clothes from the leaves of the plants in the garden. So God immediately understood that something happened, okay? Well, this is the story. Now, with Spinoza, it's all impossible, because for Eve, there was no possibility of choosing the this or that way or strategy. She was somehow predetermined to eat this forbidden fruit. Well, Spinoza perhaps didn't even take this history literally. He thought that it was kind of a parable, and well, his sort of hermeneutics or exegesis of the Bible, how he sort of understood it, was quite different from Christian understanding of the Bible or from Jewish understanding of it. He thought that the Bible in these stories somehow also is a creation of some human spirit. And so because the spirit is one, so everywhere where the spirit acts, there's somehow a similitude. So all thoughts of men are more or less the same, because all people share the same intellect, okay? So the authors of the Bible, of course, shared the same intellect as the intellect of Spinoza. So they should be understood in frames of Spinoza's philosophy. So this sin is only like a childish idea of, because it's the first man, so they were inexperienced and they couldn't think profoundly. That's why they invented this idea of sin. But it is just a product of a childish mind. And when the mind grows and becomes more sort of sophisticated, it understands this necessity which reigns everywhere, that there's no contingency, and it says goodbye to this childish idea of sin or guilt, and a man becomes free of this guilt because he understands that sin is an illusion. So he is doesn't feel himself guilty or in need of repentance. That's why Spinoza was in peace with his conscience, moral conscience, because he understood that even if he made some bad action, this was due to the necessity of his nature, and there's nothing to be regretted or to be mourning or to be sort of feeling guilty. So this is, well, of course, if this idea of Spinoza comes to a man, especially an adolescent, this will be terrible for any education, because if you educate, say, a boy or a girl, and you say you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do this, this is a sin, this is a crime, or this is a bad action. So we all understand with Immanuel Kant, for example, that there's a so-called sense of duty. So a person has an opportunity to be unloyal to his duty, and this is to be punished and to be reprehended. And so all education is built on this on this premise that people are free, that otherwise education becomes senseless. And especially if a child or an adolescent gets the idea of Spinoza into his mind, then he can become disobedient. And if you punish him, he will say, well, I am not guilty because there's nothing of this guilt. What all I'm doing is necessarily somehow products of my brain, of my body. So I'm not, and there's nothing to be ashamed of, okay? So it's very difficult to deal with this particular boy or girl. And even if students also share the same philosophy, it is sometimes difficult to deal with them also. But fortunately, now the education and is built in such a way, more or less in Spinozist, according to Spinozist ideas. So, for example, teachers are strongly advised not to blame their students in anything, not to sort of read morals to anybody. This is the part of our present day culture. So perhaps Spinoza is very much gratified or sort of glad that his ideas somehow are winning. So now it is a bad taste to reprehend other people, to say that they act badly or they need so every psychologist, modern psychologist, will say that if we are sort of teaching morals to other people, we are just showing them that we have some problems with the sense of power and that we want to exert power over them. Because if we are teaching them that we take the role of a teacher or the role of a man in power and sort of elect the roles of passive or subordinate people to those whom we teach. So this is modern psychology. So I think modern psychology is influenced by Freud, and Freud was very much influenced by Spinoza. So Spinoza is not just some philosopher of the past. I think he forms a lot of mentality of the present man. And also you shouldn't forget that Albert Einstein was a fan of Spinoza's philosophy, and he used to say that I believe in God of Spinoza. Okay, so this is also not to be forgotten. Well, also what is sort of connects Spinoza with, say, psychoanalysis or modern psychology is that his dictum that the task of man is not to laugh or to shed tears, but to understand. So we are suffering, according to Spinoza, we are suffering from different passions because we have body. You remember Descartes wrote a book on the passions of the soul, but well, also you can say passions of the body. But these passions are noxious to man. So Spinoza understood it very well, that these passions exist, how we are to deal with them. So first, this Christian or Jewish attitude or Muslim attitude to passions is that they are sinful. And if we indulge in our passions, say of anger or sexuality, then it is sinful. We commit sin. Sin of luxury, sin of pride, sin of avarice, 7 deadly sins, you remember. So when, but according to Spinoza, it's not that we should feel remorse or guilt, sense of guilt, but we should understand our body, understand our soul, understand our mind, understand our education and the circumstances we are living in. And this understanding will free us from passions. When we will understand the passion, it will cease to be a passion. So we will be cured by understanding. If you are taking sort of classes in psychology, you can easily understand that this is the same attitude which is shared by modern psychology, that psychologist is strongly advised not to blame his patient, not to say that he is sinful, that he is a bad person, that he could have acted better. But the task of this modern psychologist is to help a person to understand himself, understand his parents, understand his wife and children, his behavior, his colleagues, his circumstances, the economic situation, the present political situation. And with this understanding will come the cure. A man will be cured, will be sort of delivered of his anxieties, of his troubles, of his complexes by that understanding, okay? So understand it. And how can man partake in understanding? Because he has this mind which is, as I told you, shared with the mind of God. So it's a part of mind of God. And so we should develop this our sort of ability to understand. This is our only hope for recovery. Okay. Well, that's now we can ask how these ideas was possible to publish. Of course, his main book, Ethics, which is called Ethics, Spinoza was not able to publish during his lifetime because it contained this like heretical view. And when the Catholic Church saw that this book was published posthumously after the death of Spinoza in Latin, the Catholic Church immediately included this book of Spinoza in the index of prohibited book. Index of prohibited book, of prohibited books. Prohibited books. So because we see that this like a heresy of pantheism, and well, later the Catholic Church denounced this heresy openly during the First Vatican Council, which was held in 1870 in Rome. So this, well, Spinoza was not mentioned by name, but his idea that God and the world are one, and there's no sin, and there's no contingency, and there's no freedom, this was all proclaimed heretical and anathemized, okay? So the Catholics cannot hold the views of Spinoza. Well, it's understandable. But now we can see why this popularity of Spinoza, because of course when he was just a loner person with no prestigious titles, he was not a professor, he even didn't receive formal education or like the degree of master of, say, of philosophy or master of arts. He didn't finish any university. He studied in a private school in Amsterdam, run by a former Jesuit, Van Enden. Well, you can also look him, and he married because he was expelled from the Jesuit order. So he, after being expelled from the Jesuit order, Van Enden married and had children. And one of his daughters, Maria, I think Clara, was teaching Spinoza Latin. And it was rumored, I've read a biography of Spinoza written by one of his contemporaries in Holland, that Spinoza got in love with this young teacher. She was at that time perhaps 15 or 16 years old, or maybe even, but at that time it was enough. You remember the wife of Francis Bacon was 13, Alice, when Francis Bacon married her. So at that time, 13 or 14 or 15 was quite an age for a woman. And you remember Dante fell in love with Beatrice when she was 9 years old. So, well, she was a young girl and she taught Spinoza the essentials of Latin. But later she married not Spinoza, but another student with whom Spinoza also attended this school. So we don't know what was the reaction of Spinoza, but presumably, as we can understand from his ethics, he was cured from this passion by understanding that the situation, that for him it was impossible to love this girl because she married another man, okay, not him. So it was understanding that it will be unhappiness and futile passions. So he managed perhaps to overcome this passion, but who knows, because consciousness is one thing and subconsciousness is another thing. So now historians of philosophy very much speculate on this love affair kind of, because of course there was no carnal relations, but there was some like addiction or some well feeling which Spinoza felt to this young girl who taught him Latin, and well, maybe this trauma remained throughout his life and explains perhaps why he didn't marry. Well, so, but this was not nothing, this private education that, well, he was of course an expert of Latin. He managed to publish one of his works, which is called Tractatus theologo-politicus, or theologo-politicus. Theologo-politicus. Well, but it was created also a scandal, and it was published clandestinely also, but during the life of Spinoza. So it was published in 1670. It was written on the book. You can look at it. It was written on the book that it was published in Hamburg, in Germany, in Hamburg. Well, a German city. But in reality, it was published in Amsterdam, but just to sort of create, how to say, the false, somehow to, for the sake of conspiration, okay, it was written Hamburg, but in reality it was published in Amsterdam. Well, of course, people eagerly read this Tractatus theologo-politicus. Why? Because it was something brand new. Nobody dared to issue, to speak, to think in such a way. So, of course, some especially daring thoughts of Spinoza you cannot find there. Even if you take the epigraph to the Tractatus, it is taken from one of the letters of Apostle John, so it was taken from the New Testament. Well, there's the phrase that the God gave us his spirit, some of his spirit. Well, this, of course, this phrase can be understood in Spinoza's way, that spirit is something that unites us all, that we have some spirit of God within us, so God and we are somehow one, okay? Well, of course, classical Christian sort of explanation of this passage is quite other. But Spinoza understood it in his way, okay? But you know, he was a sort. He didn't say exactly many things. He didn't say, and well, but still, there was enough in this work, which was published, this Tractatus, the treatise, theologo-political treatise, that just created a tense atmosphere, and that's why Spinoza was didn't want to continue to publish anything under his name. But of course, everybody understood that he was a great philosopher and a great man. So, and he established connections with other philosophers of his age, and even young Leibniz went to Holland to visit Spinoza in the year 1676. This was the year before Spinoza's death. Spinoza died in 1677, only 44 years old, maybe from tuberculosis. Well, we don't know exactly, from some lung disease. Well, so Leibniz spoke with Spinoza and read attentively his works, and but he formulated another kind of philosophy, which we'll touch next Tuesday when we'll devote a lecture to Leibniz. But of course, the influence of Spinoza and some polemics with Spinoza are felt in Leibniz philosophy, okay? So, well, also we can say that Spinoza was a continuator of the so-called rationalistic tradition. So he was, in certain respect, a student, a pupil of René Descartes. Of course, he didn't meet René Descartes in person, but among a few books published during the life of Spinoza, there was this book published in 1663, was called On the Philosophy of René Descartes. On the philosophy. Well, it's just, if you look this book, it seems that it was just an explanation of the philosophy of Descartes. But in fact, you could see some seeds already in this work, which will sort of give fruit in his main work, Ethics, which was published after Spinoza's death. So, of course, if we see the evolution of the ideas of Spinoza, we can guess that there was something on his mind even when he wrote those books, which he was allowed to publish in his lifetime. So, of course, everybody understood understood, all those works were published in Latin, so they were read by educated people of that time, and people, of course, understood that he's a great man. He was in correspondence with many bright names. For example, Oldenburg, who was the chairman of Royal Society of London at that time. Well, he was in correspondence even with Robert Boyle, a famous chemist and physician and physicist. Robert Boyle, you know this Boyle-Marriott law. Well, there were other celebrities who thought themselves, who are proud of entering in correspondence with Spinoza. So letters of Spinoza are also a source of his philosophy. In some of his letters, he was even more outspoken than in his works. And from his letters, we can see that he couldn't understand Christianity properly. For example, in one of his letters, he says that for me when I hear that God took the nature of man, for me it's the same as the circle takes the nature of a square. So for him it was just nonsense. Okay, so he couldn't understand many Christian dogmas. Well, and of course the main difference was this, his understanding of sin and liberty. So of course there could be no reconciliation with Christianity. But of course he was a little bit silent on that during his lifetime. In ethics we can see some just these ideas which are incompatible with Christianity. But he lived in a Christian country, in a Christian milieu, we can say environment, and he was afraid to scandalize people just because they could just accuse him of blasphemy and persecute him for disturbing cautiously. But from his private letters, we can see that he was rather outspoken on many issues. When these letters were published and now they are in public domain, then we can see more of Spinoza, of his character, of his religious views, of his moral views, and him as a personality. Well, I hope that you enjoyed this lecture and maybe found something maybe in Spinoza that appeals to you. Maybe some of you, maybe as for example I myself, cannot agree with Spinoza in many things, but still I understand his place in the history of European thought, and also regard him as a kind of a bridge between different cultural traditions, maybe a little bridge to India, because of this, maybe some of his ideas have a consonant or find some resonance in the Indian soul. Who knows? Well, so, or maybe even in other people. Well, I don't know exactly what are your feelings of that, but believe me that Spinoza is very important to understand European philosophy and even modern thinking. So thank you for listening to me, and please, Esther, please take care to connect with me if you are listening still to me about your exam, okay? So now I wish you what remains of the evening to spend it in